Well, you no doubt have heard the U.S. is easing travel restrictions to Cuba. And college students are among the first to take advantage of that, including students from several Indiana universities. Now, when we were in Cuba recently, we saw a group from Ball State University at a nature preserve about an hour outside of Havana, in a place where they and their parents never imagined they would be. Cuba Rediscovered. When a tour bus pulls up at this eco-resort outside of Havana, it's usually carrying tourists or very highly placed Cubans. But today, it's 14 Ball State University students on a field trip that their parents could never have imagined taking themselves. Journalism student Casey Patton remembers when her mother first heard about the trip.
And Cuba, it's like, yeah, Cuba.
We've been, warmly embraced. And I think that the students, are really going to take a lot of that home.
Ball State professor Ryan Sparrow arranged the trip with a government-approved Cuban tour operator. An educational exchange with mostly journalism students. Along with lunches like this, they talked with the people of Cuba, including Cuban journalists who talked about doing their jobs in a socialist state. The kind of lessons you can't teach in a classroom in Muncie.
I think that they learned that in some ways that they're appreciative of, some of the freedoms that they do have when they don't have to think about, oh, well, there's, a government entity, alongside of us.
Their week in Cuba is mostly spent in Havana. But on this day, they are in what the Cuban government would consider the equivalent of a national park. This is the Las Terrazas Nature Preserve, a former coffee plantation that's been reforested and is now a protected area. Not exactly what leaps to mind when you think about Cuba.
It's absolutely beautiful, and I just didn't expect the government to take this good of care of land like this.
Las Terrazas is not what we might think of as a national park. Most Cubans know it exists, but would never have a chance to visit. The caretakers live in Soviet-era housing, while chickens roam freely outside.
Do it.
Still, it's a departure from densely populated Havana, where the students have been trying to build a bridge to the Cuban people and resumes for their future careers.
I'm definitely going to have a wider range of portfolio work on my website, so I'm excited for that.
For others, the excitement is finding big stories in little things.
Have a good day.
Picked up from talking to hotel workers or Cubans on the street.
So I think if it's anything that you make it, so I could just run along and have fun and not think about it again, or I could sit here and realize that I'm one of very few Americans so far that's gotten to come learn in Cuba.
I don't know what jump.
As young journalists, they are learning to open doors, even in a culture and political system much different than their own. Now, these kids came back with some great video, photographs, and stories to tell, and we have a link to their webpage, 8 Days in Cuba, at WTHR.com. You'll also find all the stories we showed on the air over the past week. We have web extras, blogs, and several slideshows under the Cuba Rediscovered tab and on Hot Topics. And there's one more thing I want to show you before we say goodbye to Cuba.
Show us.
Now, we traveled to a remote neighborhood far from downtown Havana as part of our reporting, and look at what we saw on the graffiti wall. Unmistakable, the word Indiana. We don't know who put it there. We don't know why it was there. We don't know what it means, but it does prove that no matter where you go in the world,
there's always a Hoosier.
You're probably not the first Hoosier to be there. Absolutely.
That's
so true.
Yeah, that was in a neighborhood way out of downtown, in a very poor area of Havana. The word Indiana scrawled on the wall.
It was like you struck gold when you saw it, huh? You're like, what?
I said to my photographer, John Whalen, who, by the way, did a great job this week in photographing these stories, I said, we got to take a picture of that, because nobody's going to believe us. It's there.
What was your favorite part of the week?
Oh, gosh, so many things. I have so many memories in my head, so many things that I remember, and I think the takeaway is that, the Cuban people are really just like us. They want the same things that we do, and, they've been held back for a long time, and maybe this is an opening that will help their lives improve.